Hey guys, it's Pastor John. So glad you're able to join me today as we continue our journey through the Gospel of Luke with this lunch with St. Luke. Today we are beginning chapter 2, which is really a pivotal chapter in the entire scriptures. And we are going to be looking at actually the birth of Jesus, the incarnation this week. I know that it would probably make more sense for us to be looking at this around Christmas time, I suppose. That's usually the time when we look at these passages. However, I do think it is actually a good idea once in a while to look at the nativity story the beginning of March, when it's far away from Christmas time. Allows us to see the narrative with different eyes, to pay attention to even different details. And so today we are just going to be picking up here on this Monday, the very beginning of the story. And in fact, we're here in episode 16. And we are going to be looking today at Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that the whole empire should be registered. This first registration took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So everyone went to be registered, each to his own town. Now, we're going to look next time, tomorrow, a little bit about the journey that Joseph and Mary take, a little bit about why they take that journey. So we'll be looking at that. But I want to point out today that we are really setting the historical background here. And this is actually incredibly important to Luke. Luke is not telling some kind of myth. Luke is not making up some kind of story. Luke is trying to report historical events. And he's setting those historical events specifically in a historic context. Now, most of us, of course, have heard of Caesar Augustus before. Octavian, the first of the Roman emperors, heir to Julius Caesar. Really, Octavian, Caesar Augustus, was credited for, he was, of course, the first emperor. He was credited with establishing the peace of Rome, the Pax Romana. He's credited with not only kind of pulling together the vast expansion of the Roman Empire, but also, really ensuring that there was peace and trade and culture kind of all throughout Rome and all the Roman roads, all throughout the entire empire. Caesar Augustus was a reasonably a good ruler, very important point in the history of Western civilization. But it's interesting, of course, that our narrative takes place, which is really the most important of all narratives, not in Rome, even though it's during the time of Augustus Caesar. But our narrative is going to take place in really one of the most backwater parts of the entire empire. Though I think it's really important for us to see that Luke here does actually set this in a historical context. And in a historical context that's remembered for all time. Now, I don't know really anything about Quirinius, the governor of Syria, any more than I'd expect that many of you around the country would know much about J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. But it's important that Luke mentions him because, of course, Luke is assuming that those who are reading his book would know about this person. He's also, assuming that anyone who really reads his book would likely know about Caesar Augustus. He's setting a very clear place and a very clear time, a very verifiable place and time in history. And I think that that's so important for us to see, that the salvation story which we get, God's salvation story which we get in the scriptures, actually is rooted, actually has a sound connection with verifiable history. And that connection, I think, is really key because a lot of times you're going to hear people who are going to try to argue that the Bible is just a myth that was just made up by folks, blah, 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 blah. No, there's actual historical roots to the scriptural text. And here we see Luke being very careful to show that. He's also describing a situation which would not have been all that uncommon around the Roman world, the taking of a census. Now, of course, we have some idea of how a census works. We've had a census actually taken here in the United States this past year, just kind of a funny year to be taking a census, but it is what is set by our Constitution every 10 years. And of course, we use the census data. I know we were just recently doing some strategizing for outreach strategies here in Lakeview for our church, and drawing on those resources who are actually drawing on the U.S. Census data, this 2020 census data. So we have some idea of what censuses do for us. It, of course, helps determine representation. It helps determine, how funds are distributed and other things like that. During Roman time, the main reason to take a census, of course, would be for taxes, to figure out, how severely the Romans could tax whatever particular province they were taking a census of. But in order to take an accurate census, of course, they did not have the technological tools which we have, and so it was important for people to go back to their place of origin to be counted. And indeed, that experience really serves as the foundation, really the beginning point of the story of Jesus' birth. So we will be looking at that more throughout this week as we really look at the entire narrative out of we're going to cover a good portion here of Luke 2 this week. But I do want us to think and to really give some thought this week. We're looking at how God specifically placed Jesus in a particular time, in a particular place, and as Paul would say, at the fullness of time. It's interesting that God has that plan, and that Luke here is showing us that this is a particular time, a particular place. And I do think it's important for us to even think about our lives and our relationship with God. Why has God placed you in the particular time where He's placed you? Why does He have you in the particular place where He has you? A lot of your mission, a lot of what He has for you to do is because of that particular time and particular place where He has you. So this week it's a good idea as we think about a particular historical moment, the historical background of Jesus' birth. It's important for us to also consider that God has placed us in a particular time and place as well towards carrying out His purposes. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a terrific week. We'll see you tomorrow. The Lord Jesus bless you, and keep following Jesus.